pod moth.
What time is it? Let me check my watch. Oh, it's bone o'clock. In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hello and welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Sophie Schwartz.
And I'm Katelyn Hart.
Katelyn has been replaced with a German maid.
I can't take anything seriously.
She's so silly, she won't do her chores. She threw a bucket of milk out the window. She can't take anything seriously.
You can't take her anywhere.
But I'll tell you what you can take places, your bones. And that's what this show is about.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I forgot what the show is about, actually.
I mean, you need only look at all of the bones that adorn your home and body to know what we will be talking about.
Yeah, that's rich coming. For listeners at home, I have 4 skeletons on my sweater, and then currently I'm looking at a little jar of bones and a muskrat skull, both of which Sophie gave me.
So there's no way that you can forget
No.
what our brand and personality has become, which is
no.
bones.
Yeah. The Bone Ladies. Somebody called us that at a party once, the Bone Ladies, and it was the greatest honor of my life. I think it was Jordan Eskenazi.
Yeah, I think that also happened when we were on Everything's Fine Tonight Live. When we came in, he was like, oh, it's the Bone Women. We were like, that's us.
Yeah, it's really, I like being bone women.
Me too.
Yeah.
Shall we hop right in?
Yeah. We don't have a theme this week, right?
No, we don't have a theme this week. Not as, single-minded as a bonanza is, where we have a nice theme. I have no idea what you're going to be talking about, and you have no idea what I'm going to be talking about. So,
yeah, that's actually weird. It's not usually a total surprise.
Yeah, we like to at least check in with each other and be like, do you think, vaguely this would be a good idea?
What if you were covering the same murder that I'm gonna do?
I doubt it, because mine's not a murder.
Okay, good. What if the one time we don't check in with each other, we're just covering the exact same story for a full episode?
For April Fool's Day, I'm going to hack your Google account and just be like, I want to go first, and just literally read your notes back to you.
Yes, that is good. I wish you hadn't told me, because now it's ruined. No, I'm just kidding.
No, knowing you never remember what we talk about on this podcast.
Oh yeah, that's true. Sophie has to remind me constantly when in editing.
I'll tell Katelyn a joke and she'll be like, that's hilarious. Who said that? I'll be like, you, bitch.
And then I have the not so humble task of laughing at myself.
Hey, if you can't make yourself laugh, what's the fucking point?
That's true. That's really true. Anyway, I think we should get into it. I'm sorry I derailed you. Let me just have a sip of LaCroix.
It's quite all right. Like any good train, I can get back on track.
Okay, good.
In no time. Here's how I shall set up my episode. I would like you to time travel to last week around this time exactly. And we're sitting here, we're recording our episode together, and you begin your section on vultures. Now, I know that you are doing vultures, but I don't know exactly what about vultures you're covering, and I thought that I had been done. I thought my proverbial goose, or vulture as it was cooked. I thought to myself, I've lost this topic to her. She's taken it out from underneath my feet like the carry-on bird she is. She has taken Tibetan sky burial from me.
But I did
you
it!
Did not.
Yes! Oh, I'm glad you're going to cover this. It intrigued me at this exact time last week, so I'm ready.
Yes, I was so ready for that to have been what you were covering about vultures. I had made my peace with it, and then you didn't! And I was like, yes.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad we can still surprise each other in that way.
Yeah, of course. But I'm so glad that we have the kind of almost prerequisite to this, which is vultures and their bone-eating habits.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, if you listened to last week as Bonanza, 8-legged Bonanza, what's it called?
Yeah, you got it. 8-legged Bonanza.
Where we talked about animals, Katelyn talked about vultures. Vultures are an integral part of my story, which, as I've said, is Tibetan sky burial.
Cool.
So my sources for this are, of course, Wikipedia. There is a short documentary called Sky Burials, Tradition Becomes Controversial Tourist Attraction on YouTube. That's through National Geographic. An article on Tibetpedia, an article from scholarsblog.emory.edu, and an article from talkdeath.com.
Cool. And, we don't say this enough, but if you go to our website and click on the episodes tab, if you ever want to read any of these articles that we are quoting and use as sources, there are links to all of them in our show notes on our website, and the link to the website is below. I'm sorry, I just don't think we've said that in a long ass time.
Oh no, I think that's great to say. Yeah, any articles, any videos, any resources that we use for these topics is linked on the website for further reading.
Yeah, if a topic really grabs you.
Well, I hope that this will grab you, pick you up, and take you into the sky.
Yeah, it's grabbing me already.
Alright, so stop beating around the bush. What is Tibetan sky burial?
I bet it's in Tibet.
Yeah, primarily, yes. But it's a funeral practice in which a deceased human is placed on top of a mountaintop to decompose while being exposed to elements and scavenging animals, particularly and most importantly, vultures. And this is a type of excarnation, and that is having the flesh taken from your bones.
Sorry. Oh, no. Gross.
Strap in.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm gonna do a trigger warning here for mutilation and for, I guess, just general gore on this one.
Nastiness?
Yeah, some might say, from a perspective. So this funerary practice is practiced in certain Chinese provinces and in parts of Tibet, as well as Mongolia. And there are similar practices that are done in India, but we're going to leave those alone because they are their own whole episode.
Great. Yeah, save it for later.
All I'm going to say is Towers of Silence. So due to the fact that vultures are kind of the main consumers of the body, this type of burial is also known as bird burial, which I like. The majority of Tibetan people and also Mongolian people adhere to Vadirana. I tried to write it out so that I could pronounce it correctly. Vajrayana Buddhism, which teaches about the transmigration of the spirit. So sky burial is both a practical and spiritual ritual, because in this type of Buddhism, they believe that there's really no need to preserve your body, because when you die, your spirit leaves your body and goes on to, like, some sources call it heaven, but I believe there's probably a better word for it, but where you wait to get reincarnated again. So basically your body is just a vessel for your soul to live in for a time, for one turn on this earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotcha. I like that.
Yeah. And so the thing about this burial is that this type of Buddhism teaches generosity. And so this type of burial is seen as one of the most generous things you can do with your body, because you and your family are providing food and nourishment to other living beings, i.e. the animals and the vultures in the ground.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, cool.
Which I think, people may, from the Western view, this sounds a bit, it's gory, and we think, oh, you're really going to leave someone up on the mountaintop. But honestly, I feel like spiritually, this is very similar to people who want to become trees. One is feeding a tree and one is feeding the local wildlife.
Yeah. It's like it's exactly what you said. It's like, it's just a body at that point. It doesn't, need to be, what would be the word? Like, put on a pedestal? You know what I mean? What's the word? Or like, you know, you don't, I mean, I understand cultures that want to honor bodies. I get it. But I also get just wanting to be like, okay, this person's gone. This body is, for lack of a better word, it's useless. So giving your body back to nature makes sense. And yeah, I mean, I want my body given to science, but then the parts that don't go to science can go to nature. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, same. And it's interesting because this practice, both being generous, is also, like we said, it's both practical and spiritual, because a lot of places in Tibet and other places where this is practiced, usually the ground is pretty rocky, pretty hard to bury someone. And also a lot of these places are like above the tree line. So lumber is very expensive. So in terms of cremation, a lot of times that was saved for either people of high importance or people who had died of like infectious diseases.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so they don't spread. So the body doesn't spread its illness to other people.
Yeah, and they also don't want to get the birds sick.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, that makes total sense.
And there has been, it's interesting because we think that this practice has been around for about 11,000 years. There's a little bit of archaeological evidence found throughout Tibet, but it's kind of hard to find evidence of this practice because, as we'll talk about a little bit later, the disposal of the body is complete. So, like, there's not a whole lot that's left for archaeologists to find once you've had your body eaten by animals, decomposed into the earth, and then your bones broken up. You're looking at nothing.
Yeah. A vulture has eaten your bone marrow. I'm sorry.
You're not gonna find them. So we do have very little written evidence about this as well, but one of the first recorded instances is in an indigenous 12th century Buddhist treaty that is like known as the Book of the Dead, but it's not that Book of the Dead. I know what you're thinking. It's not the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is the Buddhist Book of the Dead.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize there were so many.
Well, there's at least 2.
Okay.
So a traditional sky burial is performed in specific places in Tibet, and there's this place, Dry Gung Monastery, which is one of the most important, and that's where I watched this documentary. That's where those sky burials were taking place. So this procedure happens on a large flat rock that is used as like the charnel ground, which usually the charnel ground where people are buried is much higher up than the surrounding land. It needs to be at high altitude for our vulture friends to be getting in on it. And the whole procedure usually takes place starting at dawn and can be extensive. It takes a really long time and can be both extensive and expensive. And if you can't really afford this kind of full service sky burial, you can still just be left to kind of decompose naturally in this holy place. So you have a couple of options, which is nice.
That is nice. I wonder what the expensive part of it is. I'm really curious.
I would say the labor. Remember that.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Because, yeah, somebody's got to bring you up there and take your bits away?
Yes, well, let's go through the procedure right now.
Okay.
So, when a person who is intended for sky burial dies, their family will light lamps beside them and pray over their body for 3 to 5 days. And during this time, people aren't really touching the body. They're leaving it be. And they're kind of waiting for divination to tell them. This is traditional sky burial. Divination to tell them what day would kind of be best to do it. And family members and relatives do not really get up close and personal with this process. This kind of like vigil that happens in the very first part is where they're most involved. And they're not usually too much involved in the sky burial itself. And when it's time for the person to be quote-unquote buried, their family will take the body by horse or car or yak up to the temple or the charnel grounds. Because sometimes the charnel grounds will be really simple, just like a flat rock in a super high place and a bunch of monks there to like get business done. And sometimes it'll be at elaborate temples like the one in the documentary, where there's a little bit more pomp and circumstance, I guess. So people who are participating in this, there are monks who are praying over the body and they are burning juniper incense kind of throughout the day as all of this is happening. The first thing that needs to happen is the work of disassembling the body, and that's going to be done by a monk or ragapapas, which are known as body breakers.
What the fuck? I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm in shock.
I gave you the warning.
Yeah.
So a lot of eyewitness accounts will say about the practice of breaking up the body that it's not done with a lot of like, the body breakers are not very solemn. They're making jokes and they're doing the work with as much like vigor and kind of casualty as, you know, you or I would chop some wood, or like I would pack my clothes at work. Which is kind of important, actually, to the ceremony itself, to have the soul move on easier. I'm not exactly sure why, but I think if the people who are breaking you up are doing it with a little bit of levity, perhaps it helps you not be so attached to your body.
Yeah, and I mean, some people might be like, how could you ever do that? But it's like, it's not a living person. So
no, this person is very much, and these people firmly believe, and you know, as science might tell you, there's no one in there.
Yeah,
you know, the soul is gone.
Yeah, I mean, they're breaking up the body so it's easier for scavengers, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, according to some accounts, the breaking up the body is an important part, but also, like we said, if you don't have the money to pay the people who are doing this labor, because the job of breaking up the body is sometimes done by Tokden, Tokden, which is Tibetan for sky burial master. And that person is usually not of a very high social status or like high economic status, so they're paid well for what they do, but they're very respected. So in some accounts, they'll just give the whole body to the vultures, but it's more traditional to break it up. After this, after the body is broken up, it's placed on a high, on the ceremonial high altitude rock, and the vultures are invited to come and have their snack.
How are they invited?
Well, honestly, they kind of know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there are some places where there are a lot of vultures. Like the vulture population kind of varies from place to place with these burial sites. In some places they have a fuck ton of vultures and they have to like beat them off with a stick before they're even ready to put the person out. The vultures are like hanging out being like, hi, we're ready. And the guy's like, but we're not, okay?
Yeah.
And then they want to do it. They want to help. And then in some places they have to kind of wait for the vultures to come, because the vultures, they're creatures of habit, and if they know that there's going to be food in one place, they'll come to get it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like good, consistent food. So if I was a vulture, hell yeah, I'd be right there in the front row. The splash zone.
The splash zone. So after we just have, like, bones, after the vultures have done most of the work here, the bones themselves are further broken up with like mallets and hammers, and then ground with this stuff called samapa, which is like barley flour with tea and yak butter and milk. So they basically make like this little cake out of the bones and this like flour, and they feed it to crows and hawks, who are usually not as aggressive as the vultures and can't like get in there. So they wait for the little cakes that come later.
Oh my god, they've thought of everything. I was like, where are we going with these cakes? Like, this doesn't make sense.
We're leaving nothing behind. Jeez. That's what we're doing.
I was like, I thought they would just like grind them up into dust and then just be like, okay, the wind will take you now. No, it's really full service. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's zero waste. So sometimes in the breaking up of the body process, they remove the internal organs and they give them to the shire birds, like we were talking about. And the hair is removed from the head and usually thrown away, but in some grander temples, they'll actually keep a little bit of the person's hair, like in a room with like all the other people that they've buried's hair.
Wow. So one thing, maybe I missed it, but are these temples like solely devoted to this type of ritual? Or is it like is there also like religious services going on, do you think? Or is this pretty much happening like in seclusion?
It happens in it's supposed to happen in seclusion. We'll talk a little bit about why that isn't the case these days. But it is a very private ritual.
Yeah.
And like I said, not even the family traditionally watches.
I wouldn't want to see that.
No, I wouldn't either. But I think these temples I think most of them are full service temples, I guess. But there are, I think, 3 or 4 who specifically specialize in this, because I think you cannot get this done at any run-of-the-mill temple.
Sure.
This is a very specialty.
Yeah. You don't just start doing this for no good reason.
No. This is a generational holy ritual.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the vultures. Just a little bit.
Okay.
You like vultures, don't you, Katelyn?
Yes.
The species that are typically involved with this ritual are the griffin and the Himalayan vultures. And there are usually several sky burials a day at some of these busier temples. So the birds know when, like we were talking about, the birds kind of know when to come out and to eat. But they can also be coaxed out with a ritual dance.
I love that.
Yeah. So if a small number of vultures come to eat the body, or if the body is like ignored by the vultures, because they won't make the vultures eat it. They'll do a little dance and be like, hey, we're ready.
Yeah.
But they're not going to make the vultures eat it. And actually, if you don't get eaten, or if a lot of you is left, it's a bad sign. It's a bad omen both for you and your family. And it usually denotes that you were kind of a shitty person.
Oh, no.
That's what the superstition is that you did some evil stuff, or you did some acts that cannot be repented for.
Sure.
That you won't even be eaten by the vultures.
Yeah, the birds do not want your bad vibes.
No, they certainly do not. There are places where there are places definitely where there are fewer bodies offered, where the vultures will really come at it. Like we were talking about before, there are places where there are offerings all the time, so you'll get a little less of these, like big swarm. But they often try to limit how many burials happen at a site within a certain amount of time, and they'll sometimes move these holy sites to different sites because they don't want ghosts to accumulate in one spot.
Okay, yeah, that's good thinking. That's really good thinking in this line of business.
Under which I wrote, valid.
Yeah.
The vultures are an important part of this type of celestial burial, but they're also, integral to the ecology of the area. And, keeping these vulture populations protected is integral to keeping this cultural practice protected.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And due to, there's been definitely a big drop in the vulture population because of people. But there are now laws in China that protect vultures, partly for this reason. And like we said, we do not feed sick or people who have toxic chemicals in their bodies to vultures. We do not want to harm the birds.
Good.
That's part of it. So even though sky burial has been happening for, over 10,000 years, it still has, of course, come up against scrutiny and intolerance. It's been treated as a primitive superstition and a sanitation hazard by communist governments of both the People's Republic of China and Mongolia. Both states actually closed many temples that practiced this type of burial, and China banned the practice completely from the Cultural Revolution in the late 1960s until the 80s. So you could not have a sky burial during that time.
Dang.
So during this period, sky burials were considered among the four olds, which was umbrella terms by communists used to describe anti-proletarian customs, cultures, and ideas. And as a result of this, many corpses would be buried or just thrown into rivers.
Ugh. Yeah, that's more respectful than birds.
But the worst part of it is that people who were buried in that fashion, their families believed that because they weren't buried traditionally, that their souls never came to rest, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's not fair.
However, recently a lot of these restrictions around sky burial have been dropped and the cultural importance of it has been recognized. And now there are, like we said, a lot of rules in place to protect vultures and to respect these burial grounds. And even in fact, in 2010, a prominent Tibetan Lama visited a sky burial site and was pretty appalled with how poor of condition it was in. And so he decided to put a lot of effort in and renovate the temple. And he actually ended up building a parking lot for visitors.
Okay.
Now, if we are talking visitors like family, this is good. If we're talking about visitors like tourists, this is bad.
Oh, God.
Because the monks, the families, and the deceased, none of them want you there. None of them want you there. I am so sorry, but you are not supposed to be there. You are not supposed to be there taking pictures of the deceased getting ripped apart by vultures. That is not respectful. Those pictures could get up on the internet.
No.
And this is what a point that one of the monks was making in the documentary was that a relative could see that picture of their loved one and see you laughing at it, see you gawking at it. Someone walked up on a stereotypical Christian funeral and was like, let me get a picture with the corpse.
Yeah, it's just not, it's not right.
It's really fucked in my opinion.
Gross, yeah.
So, one last part. Do you think that you can have a Tibetan sky burial in the United States?
Yes.
No.
Oh, damn it.
You cannot. Yes.
Is it illegal?
That's the short answer is yes. Many laws illegal, yes. So firstly, state laws are going to prohibit you from this, and federal laws are going to prohibit you from this. The two big ones. Many state laws explicitly say that human remains have to be disposed of by burial, cremation, or donation to science. Our own Washington state says, quote, human remains lying within this state shall be decently buried or cremated with a reasonable time after death. So, pretty straightforward. A lot of these also specify place of burial, so it can't just be in your fucking backyard. It has to be in a cemetery.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, states tend to require both death certificates and something that is called burial in transit permit or disposal permit, which means that you're going to have a mortician or a funeral director sign off on that for you. So you're going to have to lie to them and lie to the state. It's a whole big rigmarole. And most of these laws are common laws, which are laws that are made through specific judicial decisions in which someone mishandled human remains or didn't handle them in what we would call the proper norms. And you're not likely to get called out on common law, breaking these common laws because they're usually so specific. But abuse of corpse laws, which is what we're talking about, tend to be pretty enforceable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the last thing that I'm just going to kind of end on with Tibetan sky burial is to kind of go back to its core and why I like it. This is a quote from Tibetopedia about sky burial, and I just thought it kind of put a fine point on it. Quote, Because of their belief in reincarnation, death seems more of a transition as opposed to an ending. They believe that the soul moves on from the body at the very instant of death, leaving very little room for attachment to the physical body after death. In fact, in order for the soul of a person to have an easy transition to their next life, the Tibetans believe there should be no trace left of the physical body after death. And I like this because, who doesn't want a clean slate for the next life? We talk about how much we love bones and how much we love, finding the remains of people's past, but if you could smash away with a hammer every mistake you've ever made, every moment of heartbreak, wouldn't you? Because I would.
Dang, that was
Thank
great.
You. Tibetan sky burial.
Whoa. I am moved. I learned, I laughed, I cried.
Hell yeah. That's what we want to do here on the Bone Show.
Yeah, but that was really cool. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for opening the door and allowing me to fly on through.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't cover that. But now I think we better fly on over to an ad break.
Caw-caw!
Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Abigail.
We're sisters.
And we believe in ghosts.
Welcome to Supernatural Sisters, a podcast all about ghostly encounters, bone-chilling monsters, and basically anything that goes bump in the night. Each week, we talk about a haunted place, a legendary monster, or a story that sends shivers down our spines. And maybe we'll talk about the pottery scene from Ghost.
He's not a ghost in that scene. There are other parts of that movie where he's a ghost.
Subscribe wherever you get podcasts.
And remember, we believe you.
Welcome back to Anything Bones. Hi.
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 Did you have a good ad break?
I decided to go back to my favorite thing. Animals were interesting, but I really needed to get back to my roots and do just an old-timey murder, which is literally what I Googled to find this one was old-timey murders.
I just imagine you, lacing your fingers and cracking them, sitting down at the computer and going, old-timey murders.
Yeah, I'm smoking a tobacco pipe at the same time.
Hell yeah, you are.
Yeah, I just was like, I want something old and weird, and boy, did I find it. So this is the story of Kate Webster and the murder of Julia Martha Thomas. So my sources for this were Wikipedia, Murderpedia, an article from the Irish Post, mylondon.news, and then a episode of a podcast called Macabre London, which was pretty darn good.
Yeah, there's a lot macabre about London.
I know, that's smart. Okay, so Kate Webster was born Catherine Lawler in Killane, County Wexford, which is in Ireland. And she was born in sometime, we don't know exactly when, probably in 1849. You know how it goes.
A story is always good when you're like, so maybe they were born at this time. You're like,
I don't know.
I love a historical uncertainty.
So she apparently had, quote, poor but respectable parents. But for some reason, she was just a little nasty kid, and she loved to steal, and she loved to lie.
This is the thing that happens. Who else did we have? We had another lady, who was the witch of Yorkshire, whose, parents were, not super rich, but not super poor, but man, did she love to steal.
Yeah, it's a thing, apparently. So she stole some money and got on a boat to Liverpool when she was a teenager at some point. And then she spends the next few years, trying to pick people's pockets and, steal money and stuff. I believe she also turned to sex work, was very common back then. Yeah. And she kind of just was going like in and out of jail, basically, after she got to Liverpool. At one point, when she was 18, she was sent to prison for 4 years. And when she got out, she went to London and took a job as a charwoman, which is like a maid or like a cleaning woman. But charwoman is like, it's like such a crazy.
Very Cinderella.
Yeah, it is very Cinderella. She was still doing sex work, and at this time she became pregnant and she had a son. The son is not going to be a big part of the story. I'm sorry. All of my research, he doesn't beef it, but I don't know what happens to him. Like, she gallivants all around London, and the son is like never mentioned hardly at all. I don't think I even know his name. So I don't know I don't know what happens with him.
This is England. The sun is hardly ever out.
Yeah.
Hey!
That's nice. Sounds like here. It sounds like Seattle. Yeah. Okay, so she has a son, and she, at this point, takes to robbing boarding houses. So she would, like, get a room at a boarding house and then just, like, sell all the stuff in it. That she just liked to do that.
Wild.
Yeah, she just liked to do that.
Imagine if you did that now, like booked a hotel room and then hawked all the shit in the hotel room.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I mean, she kept getting caught. Like, I don't think she gave a single flying fuck. She just wanted money. She wanted, I don't know, I guess money. Yeah, she wanted money.
Period.
Yeah, there's no and.
End
it was
of sentence,
just money.
yeah.
So she's in and out of prison, and then she hits the mother lode. So in January 1879, she gets a job at the home of Mrs. Julia Martha Thomas, and she lives at number 2 Vine Cottages, Park Road, Richmond.
That is the fanciest address I've ever heard.
So smell you. So things start out pretty good.
Okay.
They're getting along pretty well. It sounds like Mrs. Thomas was a little bit of a weirdo herself, a little bit of a freak. I think
For sure.
the Macabre London podcast said she was prone to just like taking off on trips to Europe. So if you're like working class and your boss just like up and leaves for 3 weeks, you're not getting paid. So she had kind of a hard time.
No.
Allegedly had trouble keeping like a staff. And she was also a widow, I believe. So she might have been a little bit desperate at that point. Who knows? But she managed to get Kate as her maid. Also, by the way, Kate starts going as Kate Webster at some point. There's no record that she got married. She told people she had and that she had 4 kids, but she really only had the one. She didn't. No, she didn't. Like, there's no record of that. It's pretty sure that she had a son, but like, she was just a liar. Like, she didn't know what she was talking about.
That's what makes these people so interesting. Like, the more compulsive of liars that they are, or like the more that they lie about every little part of their life, the more like crazy and elaborate they make their legend for us, hundreds of years later,
Yeah, exactly. So Kate's kind of bad habits catch up with her pretty quickly. She's not a very good maid. And she also tends to go to the pub next door more often than actually work.
I mean, hey.
Yeah, so it doesn't last. They don't stay together very long as employee. The employment starts about the 13th of January, 1879, and then Kate is like dismissed and she needs to be out of the house by Friday, February 28th.
Ooh, that's a quick turnaround.
Yeah, so about a month and a half. Mrs. Thomas was really scared of her at this point. She was allegedly asking her church friends and relatives to like stay with her. She's like, I'm scared of this maid. I'm scared of what she's going to do to me.
I mean, if you're talking about her, for good reason.
Just wait. So February 28th comes around and Kate hasn't found a new job. She still has no place to live. So she pleads with Miss Thomas, like, please let me stay just for the weekend. Just for the weekend. And then
of course,
I'll be gone.
It's just for the weekend.
And unfortunately for Mrs. Thomas, she says yes. Obviously, what happens next is not her fault.
No, but it sucks.
Really sucks. So, we're at, like, beginning of March, right? Some sources say March 2nd. I think most of them said March 2nd, 1879. And they wake up and they are fighting already. And they have this big fight. Who knows about what? And Mrs. Thomas goes to church. She's like, I'm fed up with you. I'm going to church.
That's it. I'm going to church.
She comes back and apparently they start fighting again. And then, according to Kate Webster's confession, she threw Mrs. Thomas down the stairs and then choked her to death. Although some sources claim that she initially killed her with an axe.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, she was pissed. This is from her confession. This is Webster's own words.
Oh
Quote,
my God.
This is also gross. I'm glad you did that trigger warning because this is gross too. Quote, I chopped the head from the body with the assistance of a razor, which I used to cut through the flesh afterwards. I also used the meat saw and the carving knife to cut the body up with.
Yeah, I thought mashing people's bones with a mallet was bad. With a razor? She got the head off with a razor? How long did that take, bitch?
Yeah, and
That's like a 3-hour job. With a razor you shave your fucking face with?
I don't think, I really don't think that would take so long. So I feel like maybe razor.
I mean, like a straight razor?
Yeah, I don't know.
She probably means like a straight razor, like a long razor, like a husband would use to like shave their face.
Hold on.
Okay, all right.
Well, she also says in her confession, I just said she used a meat saw and a carving knife. So she wasn't just using a razor. She was using a bunch of tools.
Yeah, she had a lot of knives.
Yeah. So there's more to this quote in the confession. So buckle up, motherfuckers.
Go on, yeah.
I prepared the laundry copper with water to boil the body to prevent identity. And as soon as I had succeeded in cutting it up, I placed it in the copper and boiled it. I opened the stomach with the carving knife and burned up as much of the parts as I could.
Lady?
Yeah, that's sick.
Lady.
That is sick.
Like, this is the type of thing that, like, you don't have this kind of plan on a whim. Like, this is the kind of shit you have thought about at least once before. The detail.
I wish she wouldn't. So, in case you had trouble following all that, or you, like, blacked out for a second, basically, she threw Mrs. Thomas down the stairs, killed her, dismembered her, and then boiled the body parts and burnt everything that she could in the fireplace, like the bones particularly. Allegedly, she went next door to the pub for a drink while waiting for the remains to boil.
I mean, it's stressful.
It's gotta be stressful.
It's gotta be stressful. You know, we don't talk about how stressful it must be to dismember a body and have to boil the whole thing. What if you get caught?
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't really thinking about that at all, actually. So she grinds up and burns and whatever, what she can, but then the pieces that she can't get rid of, particularly the head and a foot. So she packs up the body parts that she, like, can't burn. She puts them in a box, and then she throws that box into the Thames. They find a foot eventually, quote, on a rubbish tip in Twickenham. I'm not sure what or where that is. So they find a box of nasty body parts, and they find this foot, but they never find her head.
Oh.
Until I shouldn't say never. I shouldn't say never, but we're going to come back to that a little bit later. So after the murder, allegedly, Kate Webster had offered some neighbor boys some lard, which they could have for free. And I don't know about you, but I would never eat lard, period. And I would never eat lard from a stranger.
Never take lard from a stranger.
No. And apparently they may have eaten some of this lard, which was Mrs. Thomas. You know, this is kind of like that serial killer that I covered that made people into soap. It's really creepy.
Pies.
Pies, yeah. Actually, some of the articles I read kind of likened her to Sweeney Todd a little bit.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so she may or may not have fed some human lard to people. But at this point, she is just fully calling herself Mrs. Thomas. She's like, I am Mrs. Thomas, actually. And I own this house. I own all this furniture. And you know what? I'm going to sell this furniture because it's mine.
Of course.
She's back to her old ways. So she asks like a friend or somehow she has friends. This family, the Porters, suggest a man named John Church, who is like, I bet John really is going to want all this furniture. So he comes to Vine Cottages and he's agreed to pay her 68 pounds for like everything in the house. And he's going to give her 18 pounds in advance. So he comes to collect the furniture or like start collecting it, whatever. And then the next door neighbor, her name is Miss Ives. She's like, why is all this furniture going out? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And she asks the like moving guys, like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, we're working for Mrs. Thomas. And they point at Kate Webster and she's like, oh, no, the fuck you're not. And so she gets caught.
That's wild.
Or she actually doesn't get caught here. She is found out, but by the time the police get there, she's actually fled back to Ireland.
Peace.
Yeah. See ya. And they do track her down pretty quickly within like 10 days. And she's arrested. She's still wearing Mrs. Thomas's clothes and her jewelry when she's arrested, which is crazy.
Well, why not? They're perfectly good.
I mean, yeah. Waste not, want not, right?
Exactly.
So this is just a little aside. Apparently, within a few weeks of her arrest, Madame Tussauds had a wax figure of her, like, in the museum. And she was nicknamed the Richmond Murderess at the museum. And it remained on display well into the 20th century.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So Kate pleads not guilty at her trial. I know, you're just shocked.
Yeah, that's wild.
She implicates this guy, John Church, that was going to buy the furniture. She implicates the Porter family that, like, were her friends, apparently, but nobody's buying it. The trial lasts about 6 days, and then after 1 hour, the jury finds her guilty.
Well, I mean, hate to break it to you.
Yeah, come on. At one point, after she is found guilty, she's like, no, I'm pregnant. You can't kill me. So, what's called...
Everyone tries that. That witch lady also tried that.
Really? I don't remember.
I didn't say it on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't love it.
Yeah. So, I just think this is, like, kind of gross, but also interesting. So, when she claims that she's pregnant, the way that they, like, figure it out is by, like, a, quote, a jury of matrons who, like, take her to another room and, like, examine her. And I don't know if that means just, like, a bunch of women or, like, what. But she was lying. She's not pregnant. I think on Macabre London, they said that the test was, like, if you can see the baby move in the womb or in the stomach, then you can't execute her. But if the baby's not moving yet, you can execute her. I don't know. It's a bit of a gray area. And it's kind of fucked up anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, it's not even something I want to debate on.
Yeah, it's okay. I just thought it was kind of an interesting thing. And it just kind of shows that she was a liar all the way to the end. And, like, she wanted to do anything that she could to get ahead and get away with all of her weird shit.
Yeah.
So she obviously the fake pregnancy doesn't help her story at all. And she's set to be executed. On the eve of her execution, she finally confesses after, pleading not guilty and, like, trying to pin it on all these other people. She's like, no, I did it and I acted alone. Like, fuck.
Yeah.
So she is hanged on July 29th, 1879 at Wandsworth Prison. She was the second person executed there and the only woman ever executed there.
Wow.
So, remember I told you we were going to come back to that skull of Kate Webster's murder victim.
Yeah.
So we actually don't know anything about this until 2010. This shit happened in
What?
This shit happened in 1879, and there is an update in motherfucking 2010 because they find
That's
her
insane.
skull. They find her skull, and it's buried.
What?
And it's buried on the property where that pub is that was near Miss Thomas's house. And do you know who owns that property at this point?
Who?
You'll never guess. It's David Attenborough.
Oh my god! My guy!
I know.
My fucking guy!
I know, your fave.
For those of you who don't know, I play David Attenborough poorly but greatly in a infamous sketch that I do with my sketch group that is known in the area as very sexual.
What's your sketch group called, So, for people who don't know?
The Maple Daddies. We have an Instagram and a Facebook.
Head on over to the Maple Daddies YouTube to check out some of our video sketches.
So David Attenborough buys this old derelict pub, and he buys a house nearby, and they're going to tear down the pub and make it like part of his garden or something. And when they're doing all this is when they find the skull. And the rest is history.
That's insane. That's amazing. I love that.
I know.
Fucking David Attenborough.
As soon as I saw that, I was
wild.
like, I can't wait to tell Sophie that. That is my topic.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely perfect. Bravo. Bravo, Katelyn.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was an amazing story. I loved that. We had intrigue, we had fraud, we had murder, we had cooking, we had drinking, we had David fucking Attenborough.
Yeah. You never, twists and turns, you never knew where that story was going to go.
I didn't. I certainly didn't. I really, really, really didn't. Yeah, but another skeleton in the tomb. Another
one bites
skull
the
on
dust.
the shelf. Yes, exactly. Another vulture come to roost. Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast and also like liquids, we have beautiful mugs on sale in our brand new merch store on Bonfire.
Yeah.
The link for that will be in the show notes to our merch store. Can you make that happen, Katoon?
I think I can make that happen.
Yes, if you would like a nice mug, or if you think that it would make a fun holiday gift for a friend, please consider buying one.
We still have t-shirts available too.
Of course, the classic merchandise will be worth so much in the intervening years.
Yes. And we have a 10% off code you can use for 10% off your purchase at bonfire.com. And the code is Bone Voyage. One word, Bone Voyage.
Yes, like bone and voyage.
Yeah, that's right.
If you have a little time and you're really enjoying this episode, go ahead and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps to boost us up in the charts and helps more people hop on our bony train.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And check out our fellow podcasts on the Podmoth Network. We love you guys. Stay safe. Don't stay up too...
Stay nasty.
Stay safe, stay nasty. Wait, stay safe.
Stay safe, stay nasty, don't stay up too late.
Yep, there it is. Okay, and there's only one thing left.
Bone
Voyage. Okay.
We love you. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
At Chubby Scrubby on Twitter,
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
at Camilla Strader on Instagram.
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe.
Yeah, the birds do not want your bad vibes.
I mean, it's stressful.
It's gotta be stressful.
Caw-caw!